Hello, welcome back to Think in the Circle. My name is Professor Pantelidis, and we are going to talk about how easy is it to do a PhD. A lot of people are asking me, is it easy, is it difficult, especially people from industry who want to do a PhD, possibly part-time, but also students who have finished their undergraduate or their master's. They often think about a PhD and they ask some people, and often the answer they get is a PhD, it's easy. Now, I have a different view. I'm not going to say it's difficult. I'm going to say it's challenging, okay? PhD is not easy, but perhaps it is not easy for the reasons that you think about. It's not easy for other reasons that often don't have much to do with a PhD. Some might have to do with a PhD. So I'm going to talk about motivation, self-management, the ups and downs of a PhD, some of the learning that requires or relearning of a number of skills, including creative and critical, your supervisor team, and finances. To me, these 6 biggest challenges that quite often make a PhD not as easy as some people think. So let's start with motivation. And motivation often runs out faster than you think. You know, in the first few months, maybe after you have succeeded in the interview, you got this high of, back in university and I'm doing a high-level degree. But if you haven't chosen the right topic for you, and if you're not really passionate about the topic, and if you haven't planned this, and you haven't done your research beforehand about what a PhD is and what a PhD isn't, your motivation will run out very fast. I have a few videos about motivation on my channel. You can have a look at possible solutions, how you get motivated. The second big challenge is all about the self-management of a PhD. I'm talking in the UK now, and probably it's the same with a lot of countries. And I'm talking about a PhD in the social sciences. So you have to remember that perhaps in some of the STEM subjects, you get more direction. Quite often the humanities, social sciences, you get direction, but you need to manage yourself. Nobody's going to tell you, you've got this time in the lab, you got to go in the lab and do this and that and the other in a very specific manner. Not in most countries of Europe anyway. PhD requires you to manage your own time, to plan. There will be milestones, but you need to plan milestones within the milestones that perhaps a doctoral college might tell you you have to have an annual periodic review, for example, right? But sometimes you reach, the year is out and you've reached that annual review and you have not done the work necessary because maybe nobody pushed you for it. So a lot of self-management, a lot of time management requires a lot of motivation. The third key part for me is PhD has a lot of ups and downs. It's a long period, 3 years for a full-time, 6, 7 years for a part-time, and you get your highs and you get your lows, like with everything. So it's very important that you keep consistent and you create routines. This sometimes also helps with motivating yourself in the downs. I won't say moderate your ups. Enjoy your ups. Have fun. Get excited. Go out there and scream. But be careful on the downs. You gotta have the routines. Make sure you don't give up, or you don't give up enough time that you reach 6 months down the line and you panic. The other key challenge is some of the skills that maybe you had in the past, maybe an undergraduate or a master's, maybe you haven't done a master's and you've been out of education for quite some time and you have to relearn, or in some cases you have to learn these skills at a different level. Okay, you thought you were really good at researching things and you find that at a PhD level, the difficulty or the challenge is a little bit more than perhaps at master's or undergraduate level. you got to remember that by definition, a PhD requires creative skills because you are creating something. Without creation of new knowledge, you have no PhD. So I'm using the definition of creative skills, not the definition that some people use thinking of artistic skills. I'm thinking in terms of problem solving and creating something new. Simple skills like research and understanding basic research methods and expanding on those. Then you have critical skills. How do you, when you argue within the writing, which is another skill, is how exactly do you argue to show that you've read various authors and you are coming up to a conclusion and to a new understanding of theory that already exists. So both learning or relearning creative and critical skills can become a challenge, especially in the earlier stages of the PhD, but you get better with it, so stick with it. It's a skill, and like any skill, it requires time and sometimes a bit of failure and learning through the failure. The fifth, if you like, challenge for me is the supervisory team and how you manage your supervisory team. Traditionally, in the UK, you will have a lead supervisor and possibly one or more co-supervisors. So it can be challenging. You can have personality clashes, you can have egos, you can have mismanagement of the PhD process. So it's up to you to make sure you know your rights. But also, it's not just about knowing your rights, it's about how you're negotiating to make sure things happen in a manner that you don't piss off people or you stumble or step on the riggers, and then you find that it's even more difficult to work with that team. So, for example, one of the solutions I always say is early on, set up the way you will communicate with the team and the team members, and make sure that you're consistent in that way. Put down and write down, make notes of how the team likes to work. I'll give you an example of how I like my team to work, which often we ask the student to send materials a couple of weeks before we have a meeting, gives us enough time to read the materials. The supervisors and co-supervisors get together, we discuss and we merge all the comments into one document so that the student, having agreed what's the important stuff, and make sure we don't deviate from one another. Because the last thing you want is you have a supervisory meeting where the two supervisors or three supervisors haven't discussed this and they all come with different ideas. And you might even have a clash between supervisors in one meeting, which confuses you as the student. So make sure that you are organized and make sure that you have planned the meetings and you keep notes afterwards and you've agreed what you're going to produce and stick to it, what you're going to produce to the next meeting. If you haven't had a chance to create everything that you promised or agreed, make sure you alert the team early and ask for a postponement of the meeting or change the agenda of the meeting and say, we will take some of those points at a later meeting. Last but not least, finances. I find this one of the biggest challenges that many students face. They have worked out the first year of finances, and I'm thinking now mostly self-financing students. So if you are struggling financially and you're thinking of doing a PhD, don't do a PhD, because doing a PhD requires a lot of energy, a lot of your time, and you might not be able to earn as much money. And you find yourself that you haven't had enough money to even pay the fees, let alone sustain yourself, pay the rent, buy the food, etc. So if you haven't done your finances, it becomes extremely challenging. Now, nowhere have I said that a PhD is difficult because of your intellectual capacity. And I say this again and again, probably a few of my videos say that you don't have to be clever, intelligent, in the way that some understand intelligence to do a PhD. You need to stay the course. You need to be convinced that this is the right thing for you, for your own reasons, and make sure that you don't compare yourself to others, which often can also become, it's not my top challenge, but can become another challenge where you start doubting yourself and you start losing your confidence, okay? So make sure that you know why you're doing your PhD, you know who you are and what you want out of your PhD, where that PhD will be leading you once you acquire it. And if you have answered all these questions in your head, PhD becomes easier the more preparation you've done for it. Okay? Good luck. Remember, I never said a PhD is difficult, and I never said a PhD is easy. It's your own adventure, and every individual's adventure is different. Okay? Good luck.